I will call to order the Lake County Budget Commission meeting of Monday, August 2nd. The time is 9:31. If I can have a roll call, please.
I'm here.
Prosecutor Colson.
Forgot your name.
Auditor Galloway. Then
I'm here too.
I'm going to go ahead and just read the note, to at least note that notice was given, and I'll read that now, just for the record. The Lake County Budget Commission will hold a public meeting on Monday, August 2nd, 2021 at 9:30 a.m. in the Prosecutor's Meeting Room, Lake County Administration Center, 105 Main Street, Painesville, Ohio. The Budget Commission will consider the Board of Developmental Disabilities General Fund balance to determine if a reduction in the tax levy is needed. A determination to reduce the taxing authority of the county may result in a decrease in revenue available to the County Board of Developmental Disabilities. All of the above is in accordance with sections 5705.322 of the Ohio Revised Code, and that was submitted for proper notification. It was started on July 19th and July 26th, and it was also posted on the county website. I would also note that because the county commissioners are the ultimate taxing authority on this matter, they were also given notice that this would be taking place, as they would be afforded an opportunity to speak if they so choose. And I'm not seeing any of them here. So what I will do is begin this process by allowing you to introduce your team or whoever you would like to, and then walk us through the 5-year projections that you have provided to us, and anything else as it relates to your presentation.
I would like to make a comment for the minutes, please. That since the DD is a client of the prosecutor's office, and I do give representation to DD all the time, there is a direct conflict of interest for me sitting on this board in determining whether or not there should be any reduction in their tax collection. The Supreme Court rules of professional conduct, when you have a direct conflict like that, require me to abstain. So I will abstain from all discussion and voting on this issue.
Yours.
All right, thank you for having us here this morning and giving us an opportunity to update our budget forecasts. I'm Elfie Roman. I'm the superintendent for the Lake County Board of Developmental Disabilities, Deepwood, as we're more commonly known. And I have with me today Ann Mahler, who is our assistant superintendent, Eric Schultenbrand, who is extension of prosecutor's office and our legal and operations administrative director, Eric Hammer, who is our chief financial officer, and then 3 board members. Sonia Meyer, who is a board member, community volunteer, parent of an individual served, just all around community member, volunteer. And Tom Hunter, who is a had a sibling that was served by our board and has faithfully served, diligently served on our board for 12 years now. And then also Pam Martin, again, a very dedicated community volunteer, community member, who serves on multiple organizations in the community and has been serving on our board for the past 4 years. Okay, so, as we all know, before we go into this forecast, I would be remiss if I did not address COVID. Is that the elephant in the room always? So, as we all know, budget forecasts are the key to an agency's sustainability and stability. And on the case of boards of DD, these sustainability and stabilities are especially important because the services and supports that we provide to eligible citizens of Lake County are mandated by statute, and they are a lifetime commitment, such that when somebody enters our program, determined eligible to receive services, whether they're 3 years old, 6 years old, 30 years old. We need to make sure that those services and supports can remain in place for the lifetime of that individual. We can't at some point, especially with our Medicaid Waiver programs, we cannot disenroll someone. The only reason somebody can be disenrolled is if they move out of the county, their skills and needs are determined to need more skilled nursing care, or unfortunately that they pass away. So we have to be especially cognizant and conservative in our long-term planning to assure that those services and supports remain in place. All budget forecasts, as you all know, are based on variables, conditions that are known or assumed at any given point in time. Over these past 14 months with COVID, obviously, all of us were presented with variables and conditions that were totally unknown, unpredictable, and constantly changing. Throughout our COVID pandemic, the Lake County Board of DD had to maintain 24/7 services and supports to all individuals that were eligible for services. Whether these individuals were served in our school program, in our vocational and adult programs, or especially in our residential programs. The 2 residential facilities that we have on our main campus, Mentor at Deepwood, or in the multitude of group homes and family home settings that we support in every community of Lake County. Our Lake County Board of DD staff were never furloughed and were never laid off. Even when the state mandated closure of facility-based day programs and workshops, those staff that were assigned to those programs were reassigned to help work in our residential programs, because again, those are programs that are 24/7 and need to be staffed. And when the individuals are not going to their day programs, they're staying home, but they still need to be staffed. So our staff were reassigned to work in the residential programs and custodial and food service capacities, or they were providing virtual education, therapy, and social support services to individuals who were living in different community settings. As frontline workers in the residential programs, our staff really worked very selflessly and tirelessly to keep individuals healthy, safe, and engaged. And ultimately, they had to care for individuals who contracted COVID. At the end of last year, we did have COVID throughout our residential facilities, and our staff, and working in conjunction with Lake Hospital System and the Lake County General Health District, we were able to set up isolation and quarantine units in our own facilities, and our staff were truly selfless workers in donning full PPE and working with individuals, again, 24/7 who had COVID. It was a very challenging couple of months for us, and thankfully everybody came through it in a healthy and a safe manner with no negative impacts for their health. Then, beginning of 2021 hits and our attention turns to vaccinations. So we're still dealing with all these COVID issues. We were part of the state's rollout plan. We were priority groups 1A and 1B for various reasons, again, because we're frontline workers in these residential programs. So we had massive attempts to schedule vaccination clinics, whether they were on site in our main campus or whether they were part of the drive-through clinics. But we have in one of the drive-through clinics over 600 people with developmental disabilities that were vaccinated. So that's just a quick update, as much as I can be quick about that.
Elsie, was that staff and clients
The,
that got the,
yes, both. Well, the staff got vaccinated through our residential program. Those were on-site clinics. The drive-through clinic where 600 individuals were vaccinated, those were all people with developmental disabilities. The health department was great in working with us and recognizing the importance of getting not only our staff vaccinated, but also the individuals and their family members. We had a very high percentage of staff that accepted the vaccine, much more so than we've heard for other types of residential providers in other counties. So we were very happy with that. CVS was our pharmacy partner, and there were so many different ways that these vaccines were allocated, especially to programs like ours. So we got to meet a lot of new people as we were setting up these clinics and develop new partnerships and collaborations. So really, when you look at the whole experience now, kind of in retrospect, hopefully, there were some good, positive things that developed out of the challenges that we experienced. But now that most of the restrictions were lifted as of the beginning of June, while they were lifted more so in the general public and in some of our public buildings, in our programs that serve individuals, our residential programs, our school, our day programs, workshop programs, we still have some significant restrictions that we need to follow, either issued by our Department of Developmental Disabilities, State Department of Developmental Disabilities, or by CDC guidelines that we're supposed to follow. So we're still masked, we're still practicing social distancing, and it's, at least we're able to have visitors now come into some of the buildings because our individuals really love any kind of community interaction, and we are very lucky to have so many organizations and individuals who do want to come in and support and become involved with our programs. So, but you know, with masking and social distancing still in place. But now, with a little bit of a breather, we were able to again look at our budget forecast that we submitted to you, and hopefully we're looking at not only reflecting the past COVID impacts, which were significant in our budget, but all more so hoping that future variables and trends are going to return to more typical or historic predictability. So the budget that you have in front of you is showing that basically our revenue streams are pretty stable, and that's been the case for many, many years. Our local funds remain at a very stable level, less than a 1% increase per year, and that 1% increase is based on new construction. Federal revenue, you see a couple of upticks in 2021 and 2023. Those are somewhat aberrations. They are cost settlements, Medicaid cost settlements for previous years. So they are not they're not going to be sustained. And then the other revenues, again, whether that's state or other grants or funding streams, those also remain very stable. In the expenditures areas, you can see again, we're pretty stable in wages, benefits, and program operations. As far as wages and benefits, we really look at every position that becomes available. And as we looked through COVID, we learned about some different service models that we have been implementing. So we are very cautious about not just replacing every position that becomes vacant. We look at whether the position is needed, whether it's needed in a different manner, whether it can be restructured or combined with some other position and service. So that's how we try to keep our wages and benefits at a very stable level. The most significant growth in our expenses, as you notice, are in the waiver match line item and the annual new enrollment and supports. The annual new enrollment and supports we have included now as reflecting our historic trends of 20 new enrollments a year. And those are Medicaid waiver enrollments. Again, those are lifetime supports, so we need to forecast those out, assuring that we have the match monies for these federal waiver programs for the lifetime of the individual.
How come that's not a budgeted item in 2021?
because it's already incorporated into the program operations line.
Ah, okay.
So we're reflecting, you see then, the reason we have it as a separate line for 2022 and on is that that's a new cost when it is approved by our board, we meet annually to approve the budget. It would be then moved up into the program operations or the waiver match line item.
28 years, your historical average?
Yes. And that can range from anybody who's age 6, age 30, and just to give you an idea of what those costs are, the lifetime cost of a person that's enrolled on a waiver, say for a child enrolled at the age of 10, and as you know, we're seeing many more multi-system youth, kids that have multiple needs, mental health, as well as developmental disabilities, and need significant supports to help them achieve their potentials.
What's been the average age of a first-time enrollee, a new enrollee historically?
Probably around 10. I mean, we have infants, I mean, the biggest growth in our program actually is the early intervention program. We serve about 250 families a year in early intervention. But those are services based on what the team and the parents believe, parents or guardians believe that the child needs. Many of those kids, the goal of that, of course, is that the kids are, when they turn 3, early intervention covers birth to 3 years old, that they would be able to go on into regular preschool. Then we see, the kids that come to our preschool and into our Broadmoor School program. They might be enrolled in our program, but they're going to be accessing different services throughout their lifetime. But once they're enrolled on one of these Medicaid Waiver programs, let's say a child at 10 years old, and initially they might be enrolled on a waiver that is limited to, say, a $5,000 a year waiver or something that allows home modifications or some sort of home supports while they're still living with their family. But a lot of these multi-system youth kids need to live in a setting outside the family home and need to have staffing then to help them with any of their daily living skills and their routines. So if, say, a child that's 10 years old is enrolled on one of these Medicaid waivers, for their lifetime, assuming their lifetime spans to 65 years, the lifetime cost of that waiver at 100% is over $12 million. Luckily, the federal match allows us to only have to match $4.5 million. So that's where we're looking at lifetime planning for individuals. That is a commitment our board has always taken extremely seriously and guides our planning for finances. Now, we have other people, more typically, we would see people who are going through public schools right now, because our Lake County schools do a super job with educating special needs students. So special needs students are eligible for school age services through the age of 22. So after they graduate, that's when our adult programs kick in. We try to enroll individuals at age 22 on these waivers, again, the lower cost waivers, and help these individuals find community employment, if that's something that their skill levels and capacity allows, or we have helped them find adult day habilitation programs that keep them engaged and active in the community and involved in different activities, but where vocational or employment might not be the primary focus. So those individuals, if you look at the lifetime waiver cost, again, assuming the lifetime to age 65, is 100% cost is $4.7 million approximately, and our local match then would be about $1.7 million. So I mean, we're talking about, big numbers for the people that we serve, and that's what truly guides our financial planning. The other thing that you see that fluctuates here is capital. And capital, of course, was significantly affected by COVID as well. Many projects deferred, and or when they were finally picked up, the costs of materials and supplies were not what they used to be. So, we have a new operations director. He reviewed our previous capital plan and has made these adjustments. And our administrative and legal director supervises that department, so
Sure.
want to add something there?
Yeah, as you can see in the budget and the projections, we're projecting this year to at least complete, anticipate starting by the end of the year about $2.9 million in capital spending. Obviously, all that won't be actually spent, but those projects will be started. Next year, we're anticipating about $3.285 million. And some of that is a backlog of projects that we weren't able to do last year.
What's the nature of those projects? Are they buildings, are they internal property within the buildings, equipment? I mean, what's the?
Probably the one example I could give you is windows. We have, all our buildings were built in the late 60s, early 70s. The windows are original to the buildings. They've lived their useful life and need to be replaced. So this year, we started with the school, Broadmoor School, and we're replacing all windows in that building. Next year, we're anticipating doing 3 more buildings that were built around the same time, doing all those. Another is renovating the bedrooms in our residential facility. That's another project we slated for the end of this year, early next year. So most of them are renovations, building maintenance. We replaced most of our HVAC units in our buildings. That was done this year. We tend to see things come around in the cycle. HVAC units have a lifespan of 10 to 15 years. So we did all those about 10 to 15 years ago, and now we're seeing they need to be replaced. So it's mainly that, the maintenance of our buildings, those types of things. Obviously, we have the ongoing, maintenance of it's building and grounds, that type of thing.
This year, when we were finally going to start with the window replacement project, and we went for public bid.
Yes. So we had originally budgeted about $600,000 for all of the windows for all the buildings, and that estimate was done obviously pre-COVID when we were budgeting it. We bid the project beginning of this year, and the lowest bid came back at double our estimated amount. So we scaled back the scope of the project just to Broadmoor this year, because that's what it was within the budget number that we had. And then next year we'll rebid the rest of it. Hopefully, once we can get through some of these high dollar figures for construction projects, it will come down next year, but that remains to be seen. So.
Well, the building's that old, is there any asbestos in the windows or anything?
It's actually in the grouting along the windows, so that was part of it. But one of the
Would
things
probably
that
increase the
increased
cost.
part of the cost was we had to have an abatement team come in and abate each one of the windows when we removed it, so that they addressed those issues.
Because our buildings are,
Of that age.
yeah, of that age. A lot of times we do have the unanticipated hidden costs of asbestos and whatnot. We did our floor replacements 5 years ago or something,
Yep.
and just didn't even want to try to deal with the abating the asbestos or possibility of asbestos. So we did something that laid over those floors. So, but our capital, again, fluctuates year to year based just on what projects we think we're going to be addressing in those years. Capital also includes technology for us. And as we all know, the need for technology has grown so significantly. We found that even more so during COVID, when our school was doing virtual education and needing to have those abilities to reach out to the families with virtual. And for the entire time of as we started with technology, our agency that has over 500 employees and serves about 2,000 people in various services. We have 3 IT people. We have 3 IT people, we still have 3 IT people. So, again, we're very conservative in that, but we're looking now at reaching out and doing some contracted IT management so that we're not adding staff. Personally, being the technology queen, I know that not everybody can know everything about the many aspects of technology. So it behooves us to try to reach out and contract for some of these services. So that's also reflected in our capital.
Well, I know, I mean, obviously capital in your budget is going down, spikes next year, obviously there are more projects that have been put back, but then you sort of taper off at the end of that 5-year into 26 and 27. Any reason for that?
Just, it's hard to predict 10 years out what we're going to need to do. I mean, I think most of what you see in here is kind of the cyclical projects like I was talking about. You see the lifespan of certain things. So it's kind of hard to predict, you know, in 10 years what we're going to need to do. But, you know, we do the best we can.
A lot of our capital enhancement type projects, we try to achieve through other funding streams. We're one of the only county boards in the state that has established a separate 501c3 Deepwood Foundation. And that foundation is able to secure grants like through the Cleveland Foundation and private foundations or private funding. Right now, through a family endowment, we are building a massive activity center, adaptive playground that spans the back of our Broadmoor School and our adult habilitation program. So that is a project we probably would not have taken on through our own capital or funding, but the foundation has made that possible. So we are always trying to access other funding streams to help with enhancements to our facilities.
Let me just, do you have any questions?
No, I've been interrupting, asking, sorry.
No, that's okay, that's allowed. What is the current total staff in terms of numbers?
It's around 500.
Yeah.
It's around 500 employees total.
I mean, I can get that number into your payroll.
Right, right.
Yeah, don't have it in
Yeah,
front of
okay.
me, so, yeah, I can.
We can get you an exact.
I can also pull it, yeah, I just, it's a question that came while you were talking. When you mentioned that, no staff were furloughed or laid off during the COVID, I mean, does that include staff not at home being paid? A lot of county and state employees were paid and sent home. When you say, so nobody was, of that 500 people, no one was sitting at home being paid?
We had, what we did was we had everyone on a call-in rotation. So when we needed, as Alfie mentioned, some of our facilities couldn't close. Our residential facilities had to continue operating. So when we needed those staff to come in and work, and we did on a daily basis, we would go through what I'll call a seniority rotation, and we would call for the staff in. So every day they were on call to come in, either reporting, or if we didn't need them, then they weren't coming in.
Or
So-
we're assigned to custodial.
Yes.
We added custodial positions for sanitizing and
Well, you clearly couldn't have used 500 people every day with all the facilities sort
well,
of shut down. So some people were at home.
well, some people were working from home during
Sure.
the stay-at-home, like our case managers, we call them service support professionals, they were all working from home. But they were working, and you know, we can document the time they worked because they record certain hours and activities for something called targeted case management reimbursement. So we know their productivity level was maintained. Our teachers for Broadmoor School, when the schools were closed, they were working from home, doing all virtual instruction. But I would say the majority of our staff really were, it's either coming in, reporting to work, or were working from home.
Did you guys receive any CARES Act or federal dollars on COVID from either the feds or through the state?
Yep.
And if you did, how much did you receive?
We got about 500,000, for various federal funds, is that right, Eric?
Right. Most of it was for our residential program on campus. That was the bulk, and a little bit for the school, but not much.
Where does that, is that just in the federal revenue, that's the spike, part of this 12 million for the 2021? Or was that included in the 2020 budget? That's
It's in the 2021.
2021. So it's in that 12 million
And
figure?
2020.
And 2020?
It's all in 2020.
Okay. Oh, 2020. The residential programs, do those include not just the Deepwood Center residents, but also other homes and privately held facilities around the county?
Correct.
Okay.
People who were enrolled on these Medicaid waivers have what's called free choice of provider. That's a federal requirement. And so they can choose any number of certified private providers. And they live in different apartments, which you might call like a group home. Can't have more than 4 people living in one setting together. Some still live with their families, but need supports in the home for the family to be able to maintain the person in their home. So we have about 700 people that we support that way. And again, the match money that is used for these waivers is our board funding. So, and they're in every community. Lake County's been fabulous in terms of inclusion in every community.
Well, how many people are you currently serving in those residential?
About, yeah, it's about 700 in the community and in our own, the 2 residential halls in our main campus, there's about 40. The state has been trying to downsize for.
I know they have
Yeah.
been pushing to sort of close those and to
Right.
move them into other private facilities, that sort of thing. And
Right.
that's been the trend. Lake County is one of the few, if not the only, that still is maintaining? Is that,
We're like, yeah, we're hanging in there, yeah.
okay.
We're
I
like
just,
one of 4 that.
yeah, I know there's very
still
few
is-
that are still maintaining
Right.
the facilities in that nature.
But you know, there's been an interesting, the Development, Disability Rights Ohio sued the state many years ago about closing those kinds of facilities, saying that everybody should be living in the community. Well, I think some of our family members here can attest that that is not the right choice for everybody. And so, that lawsuit, I don't know, how long was that lawsuit going on? They eventually had some family members intervene, and it kind of backfired on Disability Rights Ohio, because the family members now are saying, you can't eliminate this option for families. And we actually now have to inform all families and individuals again about having these 24/7 congregate facilities. So, you know, the pendulum swings.
Sure.
But Lake County, our board has always been supportive of a full scope of choices for individuals, because everybody is at a different level of comfort, security, need, and we don't try to dictate what is the right choice for people.
No, I can understand that. What, so you have 700 overall, 40 in the facility. What were those numbers 10 years ago? How many overall in the community? Estimate on how.
Well,
We had all those.
How many in
We
the
had-
actual Deepwood facility?
we had 90.
You had 90?
That was the high, our licensed beds were 90. So,
And then overall in the community?
boy, 10 years ago, let's see if we do 20 a year, let's say 500, 400 or 500. That's really a guess.
Yeah, you're guessing, yeah. I would be curious to know that number, I'd be curious to know what the trend line is on that. Just for my own edification over the last decade or two, even just.
People living in the community.
Yeah, how many you're serving. I think that's an important thing to look at when you're looking at budgets and costs. Certainly one can look at the overall, I mean, Lake County's population has been stagnant for a couple of decades. So we're not a growth community. And I certainly understand that that is not the only driver of who you're serving. Those things can be changed by definition, be it federal, state, whatever. Different disabilities can be identified, and therefore services either required or recommended. But I'd be curious as to what that trend line looks like. Are we, as a county that's getting older, because we are getting older, as an average age, as well as we're not growing. And if the average age of a person coming in, for the first time into the new enrollees is around 10 years old, without a population growth, i.e. under 20, and the fact that we're getting older, you know, one would expect that trend line, the number of people potentially being served, to be dropping over time. So I'd be curious about that, and then how that can affect the budget, because obviously if we're serving less people over time, the amount of dollars needed would in theory go down, unless there are new mandates, and obviously costs go up, so people can go down, costs can increase. We all know what healthcare has done. So I understand there's a lot of factors there, but I'm curious to start tracking those trend lines to see, you know, what is going on. And I'm sure you guys have that somewhere, not with you, I'm sure you have binders of that information available, so I'm curious about that.
Is it more expensive to house somebody at a facility on your main campus or the community, or about the same?
It just varies, the community.
Because of the needs?
Right. Community services it supports, the residentials are based on individuals' needs. So we have some individuals who qualify for services who have their own vehicles. And they just need drop-in they live in an apartment, and they need drop-in services to help with budgeting, medications, meals, sometimes things like that. Then you have other individuals whose mental health and behavioral challenges are such that they need 24/7 and sometimes 2 staff to help with their needs and keep everything safe and
So you
healthy.
have people in the community that need the 24/7 care.
Oh, yeah.
So somebody that, for just as an example, that person that needs the 24/7 care, is the cost relatively the same in the community as if it were being on your campus, or more, less,
Sometimes it's more, which is an interesting conundrum, because when those waivers started, those Medicaid waivers, residential waivers, actually meant that somebody was waiving their right under the state Medicaid plan for a residential setting like the one that's on our main campus. So rather than live in one of those larger congregate settings, they were waiving their right to that and instead wanting community services. So initially, the cost of community service should have been, and was, lower. But those costs have gone up, and the needs of the individuals. And then when the state has been pushing to close those larger facilities as an option, and having everybody live in the community, that increased costs too. So that was one of the reasons we were not in favor of closing off the option of the congregate settings on our main campus.
I just wanted to add to the point you were making about demographics and aging population. What we also see, and what is another factor is we see different trends, I'll call them trends in the industry. 10 years ago, autism was not widely recognized. Today, we're seeing more and more of that, and certainly more and more of a need for that. So we're going to see an increase in that area, even without any type of a population growth. So I just wanted to make that point.
And the other trend, kind of piggybacking on that, is families, older families, tended to keep individuals at home and care for them for a long time. So we had a priority group for aging caregivers, and they would, if you had somebody that was still living in your home and you were 60 years or older, you were given priority in getting one of these Medicaid waivers. What we're seeing with some of these younger families is they do want their sons and daughters and family members living more typical life, so they're not necessarily keeping them in the home. So, I mean, we're seeing both things. They're seeing people, once they graduate, thinking, I want to live out in the community, and you still are seeing people, excuse me, who've been living at home, being cared for by their family members, and sometimes we're still seeing people who are in their 40s and 50s first accessing services. So it's a mixed bag.
It's a mixed bag.
So I'm done, thanks.
Anything to add to this? Okay. So the stated reason for the purpose of the public hearing and meeting was to review the 5-year budget forecast and to determine if a reduction in the tax levy is needed. I am guessing that your request is to leave everything exactly the way it is, based on what I'm seeing here.
Yeah, as you can see, I mean, our finances, especially local levy funding, tends to follow a bell curve. And in the beginning years, you better be accumulating more reserve than what your expenditures require. Because eventually you're gonna hit the top of that bell curve, and then once you hit the other side of it, the funds deplete more quickly, and that's where we're seeing now.
And for the record, your 2 levies are both continuous.
Correct.
And since we have members of the public here, I would just, for the record, point out that this board, with input from the county prosecutor, although not at this moment, we do not have statutory authority to, on our own, just reduce your levy, your 2 levies, because those were voted on by the people, and therefore this board does not have that ability. However, we have this hearing for the purposes of looking. ORC is very clear in giving us authority to be able to have this hearing, to look at those projections. I would, just for the purposes of the record, and for members of the public that are here, that if MRDD were to have a levy reduction, that would have to come from you folks, from your board, and that board is made up of 7 people,
Correct.
5 of which are appointed by the county commissioners. And so it's that board, as the oversight board, that would have to work with staff, with your staff, to make a determination about needed funding now and in the future, and then come to this commission with a request if it was determined that as part of those 2 continuous levies that additional dollars were not needed to make a reduction or some sort of a suspension. So just for the record, this body does not have statutory authority to just on our own wave a wand and reduce a levy or to do otherwise. But I think it's important for this body to have this conversation with you each year. And I know we didn't do it last year because of COVID. We did it in 2019, and my first year on the board. And so I think it's important to continue on this conversation. I think you would appreciate that from a taxpayer standpoint, there are 2 continuous levies that are funding in large part the MRDD operation. And none of us in the public would never would ever abscond from our responsibility of oversight. So from that standpoint, I think these conversations are very helpful so that we can look at and see where things are going in terms of the work that you do every day and the budgets and the forecasts that you present. So I appreciate you coming here today and providing us all this information. If there's anything that my office can do, we are a service organization, so please don't hesitate. If we can help with IT, that's one of the things that I oversee. So I appreciate you coming today. If there's anything else you'd like to add, any additional?
I just want to add too that our board has always been extremely conscientious about the responsibility to the taxpayers and making sure that we are using those funds that have been entrusted to us in the most effective and efficient way to serve the most people that we can in Lake County. You said that Lake County wasn't a growth county, but depending on census, our small county geographically, unless we take the lake into consideration, is either the 10th or the 11th largest county board program.
Probably soon to be the 12th.
Okay, so we're in there with the bigger urban counties.
Oh yeah, no, we are large.
We serve a lot of people, and our programs, every one of our programs receives the highest level of accreditation and survey results, and we're surveyed by any number of entities, federally and state. So I think we do an excellent job in providing services to the individuals, but also in being responsive to our taxpayer mandate to use those funds effectively and efficiently.
Anything else? Anything else? Okay. I would take a motion to end this particular public meeting before we
Make a
move into
motion
our.
to adjourn this section of our meetings this morning.
I will second that, since I don't know if you're going to do that.
Sure.
I'll second it.
Adjourn.
We are adjourned. Thank you so much.